Judge Dredd has like the coolest name ever. And there's very few things you can do if your name is Dredd. Like, you can't become a children's doctor. I'll see your child now. You can't be a guidance counselor. You can't run a flower shop if your last name is Dredd. There's very few options for someone with a menacing name like that. You can either be like a hardened criminal, or you can be a futuristic cop who kills criminals. But pretty much everything else is out of the question. Your name just does not fit with your profession. You would literally have to change your name if you decided to be a florist and open up a flower shop, because it just wouldn't work. I wish my name was Dredd. Stan Dredd. If my name was Stan Dredd, I would probably be a porn star. And I wouldn't have to change my name, because that's an awesome porn star name. Hey, yeah, that's another thing. Either a really hardened criminal, a badass futuristic cop who kills criminals, or a porn star. That's the only three career choices for someone named Dredd. This is a game based on the classic futuristic superhero movie from the 90s starring Sylvester Stallone. And, you know, a lot of people panned the movie when it came out, but I thought it was good. I remember watching it as a kid. I loved it. Then I saw the movie a couple of times as a teenager. Still loved it. And then I saw the movie a few times as an adult, and I still liked it. I mean, obviously there's corny parts. The acting is corny. The story is, you know, so-so, but oftentimes corny. But the set designs, how awesome the CGI was. I mean, they made this awesome-looking futuristic dystopian city. It was a very good-looking movie. You know, we give things like The Avengers or Iron Man credit, or, you know, even going back to like 2002, like Spider-Man. We give all these superhero movies credit for really being huge superhero movies with really awesome CGI that really like pulled us into the worlds of those superheroes. But I think Judge Dredd was really the first with how good the CGI was. Before this movie, what other huge superhero movies did we have with really awesome looking futuristic cities or awesome CGI? Like, we had Captain America. It looked like a B movie starring that muscular, beefy, blonde guy. Then we had a couple of Ninja Turtles movies, just some dudes in suits that clearly aren't comfortable. I mean, we had movies with awesome CGI like Blade Runner and stuff, but that's not really a superhero movie. I'm a huge fan of the movie, honestly, even though it is incredibly campy. This game, well, it's not a bad game. I mean, it follows the movie pretty closely, most of the time anyway. It looks very much like the movie. That's what I love about this game. It actually has really great settings. It has great graphics, everything looks futuristic, you have a lot of different weapons, and for the most part, Dredd controls okay, well, most of the time. While you do have a lot of weapons, you'll really only use one, the default gun that you get, that has like infinite ammo. Mostly because all the other guns or whatever you shoot, they run out so quickly. It's like you pick up a new weapon and you only get like 3 or 4 shots, 5 tops. It's like not even enough to kill one enemy. Sometimes the shooting kind of sucks. You can shoot people when you're standing up or when you're crouching, but some enemies, you can't even shoot them when you're crouching. You kind of have to shoot them at an angle, and that just means they're just going to come up to you and hit you nonstop. The movement is okay, but it's really not the best. A lot of times you will get frustrated with the shooting, especially when the enemies come up right on you. These are pretty much the toughest enemies. Enemies that like melee with you. Guys that like throw things from far away or shoot you, those are fine. But when a guy like comes up next to you and starts punching and kicking you, he'll take off way more life than guys that shoot you. And this is also because you're like at this awkward angle next to them, so most of the time you can't even hit them when they're that close to you. It's like you're shooting through them. This doesn't happen that much, so it's not that bad. There are some bad things in the environment, like some doors that you can clearly go into. There's literally a little flashing sign over the door that says go in. You can't seem to go in. I guess it's because you have to complete something in the level first, like destroy a bunch of barrels of like poison or whatever. But it's annoying. Why even have a flashing sign that says go in if you can't yet? That's pretty much the point of most of the levels. You fight a bunch of enemies, tough enemies, and then regular add-ons, and then you either rescue hostages or destroy some barrels in the environment. There's actually a lot of levels, so there's a lot of gameplay, but the levels can be a pretty complicated maze. You're constantly climbing up and down on different things, and you could get lost pretty quickly in the levels. So while the levels aren't huge, it kind of feels like they're huge just because you'll get lost in a medium-sized level. And everything else is par for the course. I mean, good graphics, a lot of guns, good sound effects. It's on paper a decent platforming run and gun type game. It's not as bad as a lot of other movie based games. A lot of movie based games are just pure crap. This one, it's not crap. Some of you might not think it's really that good, but the worst you could say about this game is it's mediocre. In fact, let's compare it to a couple of movie based games I've reviewed in the past and see how they stack up. The first one I want to look at is Dragonheart Fire and Steel. This is a game I reviewed a couple of years ago. It's a game for the PS1, and yet the graphics are pretty similar, technically speaking anyway, to the graphics of this Sega Genesis game, this Judge Dredd game. Although they're very different. I mean, obviously, they are more like Mortal Kombat graphics. You could see they use like real models, but they move the same. They have the same like frame rate. It's very similar, very cartoony type of movement, not realistic at all. So this is a PS1 game, and this is a Sega Genesis game, and there's like a 5 year or 4 or 5 year difference between the two. It's games from different generations basically, but the graphics are pretty similar. In fact, I would argue the graphics in Judge Dredd look a little bit better just because they took awesome scenes from the futuristic movie. The scenes in Dragonheart, I mean, the backgrounds are okay, they look good. They could just be like generic trees. I don't really think these are actual backgrounds from the movie, and if they are, how could you even tell? Just some trees from England, some castles, some random castle. Is that in the movie? Who knows? Who cares? The game is pretty rudimentary. You just go to the right, pretty lazy, lackluster platforming. You slice at enemies. It's just kind of a basic bitch game. It's a lot like Judge Dredd because it's not an awful movie based game, but it's not really that great in any way. But I think it's a little worse than Judge Dredd just because it's a game from the next generation and it's pretty much identical in the gameplay to Judge Dredd. Of course, minus the fact that one game is swordplay, the other game is run and gun. Now, the next movie based game I want to compare to this one is Predator 2. And this game is actually pretty good. There goes my theory of all movie-based games being crap. I talked about 3 different movie-based games in this review so far. One I reviewed in detail, and all 3 of them are not really crap. They're just like mediocre or kind of good. Wow, my theory is not standing up to the scrutiny. Now, Predator 2 is also for the Sega Genesis. Came around the same time frame as Judge Dredd, give or take a year or two, who cares? It's for the Sega Genesis. And this is a good game. It has good controls. The graphics are decent, but I think, honestly, the graphics are a little better in Judge Dredd. Not technically speaking. Technically, they're both 16 bits, more or less decent games, but I think Judge Dredd just comes out on top just because of how good they captured the futuristic settings of the movie. Predator 2, maybe it captures the settings of the actual movie Predator 2, but there's not much to capture. Like, who cares about the settings of Predator 2? Just Los Angeles in the early to mid 90s, just some regular streets, rooftops, some warehouses, who cares? The actual movement of the character and how good it is to kill the enemies, Predator 2 actually beats out Judge Dredd in that, I think, just because of the free range of movement you have. You can shoot enemies from all sides, you have all these different guns, and it's gruesome a lot of the time, the way you kill enemies in Predator 2. Judge Dredd, I guess it's a little bit gruesome, but not that gruesome. But there is one thing in Predator 2 that's a little bit lackluster and isn't as good as in Judge Dredd, and that's the difficulty. The difficulty in Predator 2 is oftentimes absolutely crazy. It's, from what I remember, really hard fighting the predators, and there's just a lot of add-ons coming at you from all sides, like non-stop. So yeah, I guess I was trying to prove that movie-based games are often crap, and yet here I am talking about 3 movie-based games that really aren't crap. Dredd is an okay to decent game, and if you're a fan of the movie like myself, I think it's definitely worth your time. Thanks for watching, subscribe for more classic game reviews. Goodbye, my friends.